Welcome, I'm Jennifer Raye, and in today's video I'm going to discuss the yin yoga posture of saddle pose and its more accessible variation, half saddle. So both of these postures are pretty deep back bends. They put a lot of pressure on the lower back, right in the area of the sacro-lumbar junction. They're also helping to target the tops of the legs where the quads and the hip flexors lie. So energetically, the stomach channel, spleen channel, urinary bladder channel, and kidney channel are all targeted in these poses. Because these postures are pretty deep, I'll also offer a number of modifications that you can use in order to really access the pose. So I hope you enjoy the video. There are a couple different ways to set up saddle pose or half saddle pose. So the first option is to sit back on your heels with the knees wide apart. The second option is to sit between the heels. So now the heels are just on the outsides of my hips. Now this is much more pressure on the knees, so you'll want to be careful here. And do make sure that the sitting bones are totally down on the floor. You could place a folded blanket under you if you need a little bit more height in order to ground the sitting bones. So in this variation, this is classically more called the Virasana pose, and you can check out my video on this posture. Usually this is used in a little bit more of an active practice. So for today, I'm going to focus on the saddle pose with the feet underneath the sitting bones. This is a little bit more pressure in the lower back and not quite so much pressure in the knees, but you're welcome to experiment with both variations. Okay, so from here, some yogis find that this is really triggering for the tops of the feet or the ankles. It's too difficult. And in that case, you could place a folded blanket under you this way, just to support the tops of the feet, like so. Other yogis here find that this is too much for the knees. This is especially true if you have a history of any kind of knee injury or pain. In that case, the first option would be to just take a folded blanket and kind of wedge the folded blanket up behind the knee, and then you sit back. Sometimes that creates enough gapping behind the knee, and that way you can stay in the posture. As always, you're never looking for sensation that feels like pain. Anything sharp or shooting will be a message for you to slowly come out of the posture and find something more appropriate. Okay, so whichever variation you choose, from here, you'll begin to walk your hands back out behind you. For some of us, maybe staying just this far or just staying seated upright is going to be enough targeting of the quads and the hip flexors, maybe enough of a back bend. You'll just hang out here. Others will start to come down a little bit further, maybe resting on the forearms, like so. Now others could use bolsters. You could use 1 or 2 bolsters behind you to support the body. Now notice here, I have the bolster away from the lower back. So this is appropriate if you have a healthy lower spine. If you're working with some injury, then you'll want to bring the bolster right up against the sacrum, right up against the lower back if you have a history of some back concerns. Otherwise, the bolster is a little bit further away. Okay, so then from here, I walk my hands back down and I come to rest on the bolster like so. So now the bolster is resting somewhere at the mid or upper back, and I rest my arms out to my sides. Now, if the neck is tense and the chin tends to rock up towards the sky, then you'll probably want to support underneath the head as well. And in that case, you'll just place a blanket underneath the head and neck, not underneath the shoulders, in order to encourage a gentle lengthening of the neck spine. So the forehead is just slightly above the chest. Now from here, once you have arrived, you can stay for a number of minutes, really targeting the sacro-lumbar junction, that's the curve in the lower spine, as well as opening the whole front of the body. This is where the stomach channel lies, the spleen channel runs along the inner legs, that may be targeted as well. And because of the compression in the lower back, we're also targeting the urinary bladder channel that runs all the way up the sides of the spine. We're helping to target the ligaments that wrap around the vertebrae, as well as the kidney channel and the physical organ of the kidneys. So a back bend like this is deeply nourishing for the kidney chi, very rejuvenative for the whole body when set up correctly. Okay, to come out of the pose, you engage the body now, and you press into your arms. You come all the way up to seated. Another option, instead of using the bolster, would be to come all the way down to the back, all the way down to the floor, like so. Okay, so finding the appropriate edge for your body. And then, like I mentioned, as you come up, you really want to engage the core because the lower back now is more sensitive and fragile. So really moving slowly as you transition out of the posture. You can sit to one side and then bring your feet right out in front of you like so, allowing the knees and the lower back to adjust. You can also just tense the quads, so pulling kneecaps up and then soften quads, and do that a few times as a way to release the knees. Now, depending on your sequence, there are a number of counter poses that you could take. You could take a child's pose, although the child's pose is a really deep movement the other way. And so you'll want to think about your sequence. If you're moving more into back bends, then you may not want to take a child's pose right away. Just sitting in a more neutral position like this or lying on your belly would be more appropriate. Now, if full saddle is not available, then you can try half saddle, and you can also practice half saddle on its own as well. So half saddle here, I'm sitting now on the inside of one heel, so I pull the leg back, the heel is on the outside of the hip, like so. Once again, I want to make sure that the sitting bones are totally grounded here. So I could place a blanket under me to make sure that the sacrum is even. From here, I come down like I did earlier, maybe resting on forearms. Maybe that's enough opening in the quad, maybe just coming a little bit. Once again, I could use the bolster behind me or a couple of bolsters. I could also come all the way down to the floor like so. Now, number one option here is to release the leg out, extending leg, and in the yin practice I can let the extended leg soften and release. There's no need to engage. In more active practices we would really work with engaging that bottom leg. Another option is to bend the extended leg and plant the foot this way. So you can experiment with a few options. Final option, and probably the deepest option, would be to draw the knee into the chest this way. That will really help to activate the stomach channel, the quads, and the hip flexors. And of course, put more pressure on the knee. Okay, whichever variation you're choosing, you would of course do both sides, and then you engage as you come up and finding a more neutral shape as you release. So especially important, because we're putting so much pressure on the knees and the lower back in these postures, is to pay attention to sensation. So if you're experiencing any sensation that feels sharp or shooting, anything that feels severe, you'll want to take a variation that helps to support the body more, or you'll want to adjust the pose in some way so that the sensation is just, sort of dull, general ache, a little bit of a feeling of pressure, but never anything that feels like pain. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed saddle and half saddle pose. Be sure to get over to jenniferraye.com and sign up for my mailing list there. That way I can keep sending you tips and suggestions for your yoga practice. Thanks so much for watching. Namaste.